afterwards was just a lie. I have not seen any video, and I've yet to see any video that shows a lunge towards the secretary. He clearly identifies himself. So here you have a situation where they put him in handcuffs when you absolutely had no need to do that at all, even if they genuinely thought he was just a member of the public interrupting. And then when this becomes public, you put out a statement that is incredibly easily disprovable, and you make arguments that are just disprovable from the tape. And so this is yet another example of when we have a conflict in this country right now, and you have two branching paths. One is towards de-escalation and the other one is towards escalation. This administration is taking that escalation path every single time, especially when it comes to its domestic political opponents. And this is fraying the stability of this country. As this was happening, you're also.
Do you know why? Do you know why that this administration is doing that, sir? It's because for the past 5 administrations, they failed to do it. So now you got to do a mop up towards draining the swamp.
On Twitter of these shouting matches on the House floor, people screaming at each other. And it did have, when you're reading about flashpoints in American history where America starts to feel as if it's coming off the rails, you will have the personal conflicts that are online, that are around the nation, start to spill into the halls of power.
And this is what happens whenever you have a failure of government pertaining to your judges and your law makers in not doing their jobs properly. It's called dereliction of duty. And whenever the people see this, they understand that if we don't take up the reins ourselves in clearing this up or straightening this up, whichever way you want to look at it, then obviously it's just going to grow worse and worse and worse. And the proof is in the pudding whenever you have a great nation such as America that has went backwards, 1 step forward and 2 steps back for the past 30 plus years. It's pretty obvious what has occurred here, and I've said all along, pertaining to January 6th, I truly believe that a lot of those men and women was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. They got caught up into a scenario that they had no idea that morning whenever they went to the Capitol building to listen to the speech of the inauguration of the exchange of the power of being duly elected. They had no idea that they was going to get caught up into some sort of rigmarole like a raid. They were standing up for their patriotism duties. They felt as if the government itself was going in the wrong direction, and they was there to try to bring forth a patriotic, better way towards straightening it out, because obviously our politicians was the very ones that's got it in the shape that it's in to begin with. Various politicians has gotten this in the shape that it's in to begin with. Proof is in the pudding. You can't deny that. You can't deny that. So whenever it did get out of hand, then Secret Service realized how badly that it was out of hand. That's whenever panic set in. And that's whenever windows started being broken and pepper spray started being pepper sprayed, and people got caught up into the hype. A lot of them did, not all of them, but a lot of them got caught up into the hype and started doing things that ordinarily they wouldn't have never done. Now, whenever you have a government that is no longer functioning to the will of the people, you can expect this type of resistances. Now listen to Einstein here that's fixing to talk pertaining to his analogy.
And we're just seeing this, and time and again they're choosing to escalate, not de-escalate.
John, talk about that a little bit more, because I keep hearing from members of Congress that something that is new at the moment since the second Trump administration
Tell us, John Einstein. Tell us, John Einstein, what you think.
Members of Congress, they say to me, look, it's not just that I'm feeling under threat, it's also that, my family might be feeling under threat. What are you hearing about how much more threats of violence there are, and how this kind of incident doesn't calm things down, but it provokes people to more violence?
Now, you've heard me say before, and I'll say again, before the actual Civil War broke out, there was political and social disturbances among the people, and a lot of that at that time had to do with territorial rights, especially out west. But basically, it started out as a fist fight, and then it went from a fist fight to an all-out and out brawl, and then it went from an all-out and out brawl to an actual civil war. Listen to Einstein here, what he's got to say.
Provokes people to more violence.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, almost all public officials, including perhaps most frighteningly judges, who are supposed to be the umpires, who are supposed to be part of the field but have a certain authority, are in an, I don't want to say an unprecedented threat environment, to use that term of art, but it is a real, tactile, sense of menace in the country.
Tactile. I ain't never heard that word. I have to look that word up.
Sense of menace in the country, and I think what David has written about so well is really well.
So now you're a menace.
And I think
So now you're a menace if you stand up for the qualities that our ancestors stood up for pertaining to right and wrong. See what I'm saying? Their imagery, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. And whenever you're not beholding something correctly, well, you're going to be doing it incorrectly. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Is the glass half full or half empty? Listen to some more what Einstein's got to say here.
written about so well is really well, our point's really well taken. Part of what's happened, I think, Kay, is, well, first of all, the historical point you asked about. The last time it was this bad, not to shake everybody's Friday morning even more than it's already shaken, given what's going on, was the pre-Civil War period, where you had an extraordinary amount of...
See, this is Red Roddy. This is Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, Red Roddy, that everybody is recognizing pertaining to our men and women of arms, in arms.
Political violence. Civil War period, where you had an extraordinary amount of political violence. And we know how the 1850s turned out. And so these are signs of a...
Now, what did he just say? Listen to this one more time.
Civil War period.
Listen to it one more time, please. Listen.
It's already shaken, given what's going on, was the pre-Civil War period.
Pre-Civil
where
War.
You had an extraordinary amount of political violence. And we know how the 1850s turned out. And so these are signs of a deeper condition within the country, which...
And it was based around state rights mixed up with federal rights, territorial rights, and the next thing you know, they wound up in a fist fight. And it wasn't until about halfway into the Civil War, whenever people like Lincoln and other politicians realized that, my God, King George III is looking over our shoulders, wanting to know what's going on over here. And that's whenever they had to come up with a valid reason, and that's whenever they started emphasizing upon slavery. That's whenever they started emphasizing upon the humanitarian rights for all. Up until then, it was basically just a brawl. It was just a brawl that broke out amongst people because they felt like that they wasn't getting the right end of the, wasn't getting a fair shake at things. And basically the South actually was the ones that didn't get the fair shake, because they was the ones that was going to initiate the same type of activities that the North was initiating. And basically the biscuit was pulled out of their mouths in saying, oh, no, we can't do that. Well, no. Even though slavery had already been legalized in 2 northern states before the Civil War ever even broke out. See what I'm saying? So there's different perspectives in how that you look at this, but at the same time, you have to look at the facts in what was the characteristics of the Civil War and what actually started it. And now you're looking at basically the same thing as what Einstein is saying here.
A fraying, I believe, of a kind of consensus, not about policy, but about politics not as total war, but as a mediation of differences. That's what a democracy, that's what a constitutional system should be. And the prevalence of violence is useful to politically useful for in this case the administration, and very dangerous. And I always hate the phrase both sides. Both sides, everyone needs to take a deep breath. Everyone needs to remember that what makes America truly great is the rule of law, is the capacity of the country.
What law? Whose law? You know, they make up laws and then they violate the laws. They break the laws themselves in their own conveniences. Kind of like whenever Congress banded that we the people would never take the blow again pertaining to the bank industry, pertaining to the falling in 2008 of the real estate markets and Chevrolet, Ford, and all them other ones. But yet now here comes Biden in the middle of realizing that a few banks had made a bunch of bad decisions, and because of it, he reversed that law in us, we the people, fitting the bill once more for other people's mistakes. So whenever you have these topsy-turvy types events, you have to start recognizing whose law, what law. See, that's the one brilliant thing about God. God's laws has never changed. The Ten Commandments today are the same Ten Commandments that God gave on the mountainside with Moses. God's laws does not change.
Politics. And this prevalence of violence is a sign that we are not living up to that covenant.
Coming up, retired Navy pilot and U.S. Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona is standing by. He'll weigh in on Israel's strike against Iran.
The covenant's supposed to be order. Order. And once more, whenever you have a group of people that has become disorderly in dereliction of duty and not fulfilling the demands for the people, then it's up to the people to realign that. Because obviously, we've had a great deal of differences to the point of it basically being imbalances. And in the imbalances, you see how so many people are now being hurt and damaged and even ruined to some degree because of the unfairnesses of the biasness coming from our government. It's up to we the people to realign the government. It's up to we the people to take the imbalances and turn them back into a balanced state.
Struck an Iranian nuclear facility.
Okay, we know what happened there. Israel bombed over there towards stopping them regarding the nuclear activity going on. And it's bad, and it could very well lead into something even bigger. I hate to say that, but it could.
But they didn't know what was.
All right, this is from Trump. Okay, Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save that was once known as the Iranian Empire. I didn't know that there was an Iranian Empire. This must have come into effect after the Persian Empire. This must have happened during the Arab Spring. I didn't know that there was an Iranian Empire. But I guess there was. News to me.
They are all dead now, and adding, Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left.
And Jonathan, according to reports in multiple Israeli outlets that cited an anonymous source, the Mossad spy agency began smuggling missiles into Iran several months ago and also secretly installed explosive drones deep inside the country to lay the groundwork for this overnight attack. NBC News has not been able to confirm those reports. Meanwhile, Iran's president, Jonathan, messaging his nation today, Iran's legitimate and powerful response, he says, will make Israel regret its foolish acts. Jonathan.
NBC's Keir Simmons in Dubai. Keir, thank you for your reporting. And more now, what Keir just said. We're beginning to learn just how these Israeli attacks were carried out. According to reports in multiple Israeli outlets, citing a source, the Mossad spy agency reportedly began smuggling missiles into Iran several months ago and also secretly installed explosive drones deep inside that country to lay the groundwork for the overnight attack. According to the Washington Post, 2 people with knowledge of the operation described the explosive drone plot as similar to the Ukrainian operation that destroyed Russian strategic bombers this month, but said there was no coordination between Israel and Ukraine. NBC News, as Keir mentioned, has not independently confirmed those reports. Joining us now, Israel's ambassador to the United States, Michael Leiter. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us this morning. Can you tell us, begin with, a little more about the goals of this attack? What did Israel hope to accomplish?
Well, what we plan to accomplish is the total annihilation of Iran's nuclear weapons program. They have made no secret of their intention to use that program to eliminate the state of Israel. There are actually written documents that clearly state a program for the elimination of Israel. They began this war with their proxies on October 7th by slaughtering 1,200 of our civilians. They continued with the Hezbollah. They continued with the Houthis. And very imminently, they were to launch a nuclear attack and a ballistic missile attack on us as well. This has to be terminated, and we're in the process of doing so.
And can you confirm the reporting there, Mr. Ambassador, as to how Israel carried out these attacks, smuggling over missiles and drones months ago?
Well, I can tell you, Jonathan, that when the dust settles on this operation, people will be surprised to the extent of the genius that was applied here. It goes beyond the Beeper operation in Lebanon and the Ukrainian drone operation in Russia. This was planned for a long time, in the eventuality that would be clear to us that there was not going to be a negotiated deal, that Iran would not dismantle its nuclear infrastructure, and that we would have to act. We reached the conclusion that we'd have to act because this is, as I said, an existential issue. This is our existence. We don't have time. And we are what the Iranians call a one-bomb country. We don't have a second chance. If they get a hold of the nuclear bomb, they're going to use it. And that's why we have no choice but to act in our self-preservation, in our self-interest, and really to ensure that we can maintain our status as an independent state in the Middle East.
Amen.
So, Mr. Ambassador, why now? You just said that you did not believe, your country does not believe, that a negotiated settlement with Iran was possible. That runs contrary to what President Trump keeps saying. In fact, that he said repeatedly as the week has went on, he said it again this morning, in fact, that he does think that a deal...
They intercepted. And the reason why that they intercepted was because they feel provoked and they feel like that there was no other alternative other than to do this. Once more, whenever you're dealing with people that's got blood in their eyes, and that's all that they can see is destruction to Israel, in which in 1993 the call went out of going to annihilate or eradicate Israel, and after they get through with Israel, then they're coming after us because we are a Christian known nation. So you can't play with people like this. As the old saying goes, you nip it in the bud. A stitch in time saves 9, because you realize that, hey, if we continue on this path that we're on, we're only jeopardizing the lives and the safety of our own people, pertaining to the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. And whenever you're dealing with this type of idiocy over there, and it is idiocy, because I mean, I never would have thought in the year 2025, me being born in 1961, that I would still see people over there basically being lazy, no good, riding around on camels, basically living in primitive states like there was back probably 1,000 years ago, and they're not going to do no better. They're not going to pull up their bootstraps and try to evolve and learn and become a civilized society. So whenever you're dealing with this type of evil, you do have to choose between the lesser of the two evils a lot of times, in which it can give the appearances from others that what you're doing in and of itself is evil. But that's where you have to have good strategies in understanding that a lot of times this is the only way that you can overcome evil, is by using their own techniques, by using their own strategies. Because if you didn't, there's nowhere in the Bible where it says that just because you're a born again Christian or you believe in Yahshua, Yahweh, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that you're supposed to be somebody's whipping post or somebody's floor mat. There's nowhere in the Bible that it says that we're just supposed to be abused and taken advantage of this way. So, to me, it makes sense. Be it as it may, right or wrong, it makes sense for Israel to engage into this endeavor. I think it was called something Lion, if I'm not mistaken.
Deal can be reached at the negotiating table. Why does Israel have a different view?
Well, actually, I don't want to serve as spokesman for President Trump, but Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump have really been on the same page on this issue from their very first meeting in the Oval Office at the beginning of February. Both the Prime Minister and the President have said that Iran could not have a path to a nuclear weapon. And they have both said that if it is not achieved through negotiations, it will be achieved in a different fashion, in a kinetic fashion, a military fashion. It was very clear that this week the negotiations had basically petered out. The president now says, on the basis of what we've accomplished over the past 12 hours, it is possible that now perhaps the Iranian leader will look to his right and see that he's lost his men, look to his left and see that he's lost his military authorities, and go into negotiations. And if now he's willing to dismantle his nuclear infrastructure and give up on this weaponization program, destroy the ballistic missiles, the thousands of ballistic missiles that a people that doesn't have electricity and water every day are producing thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles. This is what the Iranian people want as well. We're getting so many messages from the Iranian opposition of thanks, of embracing, of love from the population, because they have been deprived of a normal government and they've been subjected to this apocalyptic madness. So we are...
And that's exactly what it is, apocalyptic madness. Because they're willing basically to do a kamikaze type movement in destroying themselves just to be able to get a blow in on their enemy, which is Israel, which is America, and they're never to be trusted. Never. There comes a time to where you know that these people cannot be reformed. And the only way to deal with them is with brute force. And whenever it comes to Netanyahu making a decision between the lesser of the two evils, I feel like that he probably made the right decision there. Because you cannot give the devil and the devil's people any leadway, because if you do, as the old saying goes, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile.
Going to pursue this to the point where there is no longer a nuclear program, an offensive nuclear program intended to destroy the state of Israel, and a large-scale ballistic missile program intended to inflict damage, harm, and death upon our civilians.
So both the Prime Minister of Israel and the IDF said last night that this is going to be a campaign that could last several days, perhaps even a couple of weeks. is there anything that could occur between now and then that would cause Israel to pause the campaign? For instance, if, as you just said, Iran were to come to the U.S. and to Israel and say, we'd like to make good faith negotiations now, would that be enough to pause this campaign, or is it going forward no matter what?
Sure. If we can accomplish the complete dismantlement of an offensive weaponization program on the part of the Iranians, sure, it could stop. But we need to see the dismantlement. It's what we said at the very beginning of the negotiations. As long as they result in zero enrichment and complete dismantlement of the infrastructure program, both the weaponization program and the enrichment program, then that's what we want to achieve. If it can be achieved in a diplomatic sense, diplomatic forum, that's fine. But
More
it
power
has
to
to
it.
be achieved in total. No half measures. This has to be an Iranian regime that no longer pursues the destruction of Israel. And that functionally is accomplished by destroying their nuclear weapons program. Look, we don't have a second chance. We have to understand this. 90 years ago, when somebody stood up and said he's going to annihilate the Jewish people, we didn't have an army. We didn't have a state. We had nobody to defend us, and we ended up with 6 million dead. This is what the new Hitler in Tehran wants to accomplish. The same thing that his predecessor in Germany accomplished 90 years ago. We're just not going to let it happen. It's just very clear.
And lastly, Mr. Ambassador.
And if you really want to get technical about it, you can go back into the old Persian Empire, where it talks about that in Revelations pertaining to Balak and Balaam, that even God hates, because during the time of Daniel, these evil rulers could have cared less about any type of humanitarian gracefulness, just like Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, and just like others was thrown into the heaping furnace of fire, that God protected during that time. That God protected the real, true, holy, righteous God. And, they can choose whatever excuse that they want to choose pertaining to their God, but the fact of the matter is, their God is not God. Their God is evil. Their God is demonic. Their God is the Luciferian Lucifer that is a stem off from the old Persian Empire.
And lastly, Mr. Ambassador, you while this is going on in Iran, is there any impact of what the Israeli military is hoping to accomplish in Gaza? Is that campaign still able to continue? Are there manpower issues? And of course, that campaign, of course, has received quite a bit of international condemnation.
Yeah, look, we're dealing with this international condemnation. In the meantime, internationally, people are sitting on their hands and doing nothing about this evil. Look, your question
Exactly. I'm basically running into the same thing here in Northwest Tennessee, to where everybody wants to criticize me or judge me for who I am and what I stand for, but yet no, they themselves ain't willing to make a stand. And there comes a time in leadership that you got to put all that to the side, and you got to say, you know what? I don't care what you think. I don't care how you judge me. I don't care, because you're the one that is actually showing your true colors in criticizing me, because I'm standing up for a cause or a reason, while you're sitting back in the corner doing nothing but criticizing or bringing ridicule to me. So there comes a time that you have to be forward about who you are and what you stand for.
in order to implement its program to destroy Israel. So yes, once the head of the snake is removed, once Iran is diminished and neutralized entirely, we're going to see movement in their proxies as well. They're simply going to choose defeat and no longer continue their incessant attacks on Israel. We're going to see Hamas destroyed, and we're going to see our hostages released, and we're going to see Hezbollah completely neutralized as well.
Amen.
In Lebanon. This is a
Amen.
ring of evil that we have no choice but to defeat.
Amen.
Israel's ambassador to the United States, Michael Leiter. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jonathan. Thank you.
So a short while ago, President Donald Trump spoke to ABC News about the attacks. I think it's been excellent, Trump said this morning. We gave them a chance, and they didn't take it. They got hit hard, very hard. They got hit about as hard as you're going to get hit. And there's more to come. A lot more. When asked if the U.S. participated in the attack in any way, Trump responded by saying, "I don't want to comment on that." We should note Secretary of State Rubio, in his statement last night, which was the only U.S. statement on the attack, said the U.S. was not involved. It was a unilateral Israel mission. Trump also posted on Truth Social a short while ago, writing, "2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance." And it's worth spending just a quick reminder here that President Trump has been trying to push Israel to not take this step, and carry out this strike for weeks now. He even waved off an attack back in April. But now Israel went forward, Trump trying to navigate this new reality. Joining us now, Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. He is a member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, as well as being, of course, a retired Navy fighter pilot. Also with us for this conversation, NBC News national affairs analyst and a partner and chief political columnist at Puck, John Hammond, and former MSNBC host Chris Matthews. His Substack is titled Hardball with Chris Matthews. Mr. Senator, we'll start with you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Let's just get your reaction to what happened overnight and is still happening as we speak, despite, as mentioned, warnings or requests, I should say, from the United States to give diplomacy a chance.
On this Red Friday, June the 13th, Friday the 13th, we must understand that the enemy, just like the Bible talks about, will come down in great wrath in the last days because he knows his time is short. There is no ifs and ands about how that the devil, evil, is out to kill, steal, and destroy anything that even remotely promotes good.
Fuel-grade uranium, below 4% enrichment. And then in 2018, when Donald Trump was president in the first Trump term, he terminated that agreement. At that point, Iran did not have the amount and the quality of uranium to make a nuclear weapon. And my view is that was a colossal mistake. And then over the years, they have increased the amount of uranium, and to get a weapons, you need 90% enrichment, or actually a little bit higher than that. So they've been on this trajectory for a while to be able to build a nuclear weapon. And certainly Israel has a right to defend itself, to make sure that they don't get to what's called breakout, to have the uranium to make a real bomb. And they're getting close. I mean, we've been watching this and we expected this. Now, my hope was that this administration, this president who says he's really good at making deals, though we haven't seen that in Ukraine with Russia, his involvement there. But the same thing here is that negotiation failed. So now my biggest concern is just for, our equities in the region, U.S. citizens in the Middle East. I do not want to see a larger conflict, and I agree that we should continue, or the Israelis should start negotiations again with the Iranians.
So Chris Matthews, an interesting subplot to all of this is a relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. They were very close during Trump's first term. Netanyahu angered Trump when he recognized Joe Biden as the rightful winner of the 2020 election. This time, things started off on the right foot. We remember Trump's Middle East Riviera plan for Gaza, but there's been real signs of strain since, to the point where President Trump skipped Israel when he was in the Middle East not long ago, and now it appears...
And the reason being is because you got too many cooks in the kitchen, you got too many chiefs and not enough Indians over there. You got everybody struggling towards wanting to be the king of the mountain over there.
It's interesting. It's not.
And what they're actually doing, they're choking their own. They're choking their own progress. They're choking their own future by doing this. It's crazy. It's insane. It's sick. It's evil.
For them, we're really rooting for them against all those Arab countries that were attacking them, including Egypt. And then when you look at their attack on Gaza, the American people are very split on that. Very split on that. But when it comes to Israel,
shouldn't have been.
Its actual existence, the American people are 100% with them. And they look at Iran. Why does Iran want to bomb? Well, it may want to bomb to do the one strike thing. One, as the ambassador said, one bomb country. You knock out Tel Aviv, and that's it. That's the ball game. And so Israel can't afford to have an aggressive war by nuclear weapons with Iran, they have to stop them from having nuclear weapons. Now, Obama said, I'll put a time limit on it. They can't have one for 5 years. Well, fairly enough, Trump said that's a joke. 5 years, they'll have one. So that's not going to stop them. So he can't make a deal that says X many years. He can't come out and say, okay, we're going to stop him from getting a weapon for 5 years. He'll be laughed at because that's what the Obama deal was. So he has to really get rid of the bomb-making ability of that country. He's got to stop them from their nuclear route. He's got to get them off that route to something else. And he says it's hard to get there. Well, yes, it is hard to get there because that's what they want to do. They want to bomb Israel. It's basically what they want to do and scare the hell out of them if they don't. But I think it's an aggressive war by Iran, and that's why people are rooting for Israel in this situation with Iran. Now with Gaza, totally different situation.
So, Senator, let's get your reaction here. Where you said a moment ago that you would like to see negotiations continue. President Trump does as well. But I was talking to actually a diplomat from the region a short time ago who cast that as very unlikely, at least for the time being, because Iran, just to save face domestically, is going to need to hit back in some way, even though its ability to do so has been severely compromised since October 7th due to all the attacks, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the like. And also they can't be seen as being bullied back to the negotiating table.
Well, it's also been compromised in regard to just the strikes last night, right?
Sure.
They've got to be able to, deliver, kinetic, operations on the Israelis, and that's going to be, really, really hard for them. And the Israelis are going to continue this operation. This isn't the kind of thing that you're going to do in one night, especially with their limited ability, limited tanking ability. They don't have like heavy bombers like we do and other countries do. They're small fighters with smaller amounts of munitions. This is going to take some time if the goal is to completely eliminate the program. But I do think at some point here, they need to have a discussion with the Iranians because their nuclear capability needs to be removed. But at the same time, we do run a significant risk that this thing spreads beyond just a Iranian-Israeli conflict. And it's not going to be good for any country to have a wider war in the Middle East.
So, Senator, let's now turn to matters here at home, the situation in Los Angeles. Another night of a curfew there. There were some protests, but it certainly has calmed down as the week has continued. We had a court order that last night said that President Trump would not have the ability to mobilize the National Guard without the governor's approval. But now another appeals court has put a stay on that, so he at least still has that ability through Tuesday. We'll learn more. And then, of course, amid all of this, in Los Angeles, one of your colleagues, Senator Padilla of California, tried to ask a question of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at her news conference, at what point he was manhandled, thrown to the ground, handcuffed. We want to get your reaction to that. Let's watch it again now, and then I'll come to you on the other side.
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have a question for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is I have a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your...
And there's no doubt you're dealing with inappropriate behavior here. But whenever you're dealing with an inappropriate situation that's been brought upon by various other presidential administrations, there comes a time that sometimes you just got to put your foot down. And I hate it for this senator, but the fact of the matter is this country is in trouble. This country is in big, big trouble. And if we don't realign this great nation, we may not have a nation. We may not have a country.
He does so loudly multiple times. So your reaction there, not just to this incident, but also the idea this is a co-equal branch of government, the branch you serve, the legislative branch, a member of that trying to ask the executive branch a question, and that's what happens.
Well, Jonathan, normally what would happen in a normal administration is we would be invited to an event like that with the Secretary of Homeland Security or any cabinet member. When they go to Phoenix, myself or Ruben Gallego or members of the House of Representatives, meet with them ahead of time and would attend and be invited to attend an event. Now, my understanding is he was in the room. He did identify himself, but also the Kristi Noem should know who he is. He serves on the committee that she comes before in the United States Senate routinely. So this whole idea that this guy busted into the room, I mean, you can see in the video that he wanted to ask, some questions. We've seen this with the mayor in Newark, with the congresswoman, with a labor leader. This is what happens in countries like Russia and China. This is how the government suppresses speech. And that's what we're seeing here with Alex Padilla. This should have never happened. And I don't think under any administration in any world would you see this, Democrat or Republican administration, except from Donald Trump.
And John Heilemann, the point the senator just made, there is one I heard from a lot of Democrats last night and this morning. This is an unprecedented escalation of tensions and really, really alarmed people the way that this administration, this executive branch, is trying to subvert even members of the legislative branch when questioned.
Right, Jonathan, I think that's right. And Senator, I guess my question to you is, we've seen with Kristi Noem in particular, we've seen a number of things. We've not ever seen someone who would be a secretary of DHS who couldn't properly explain what habeas corpus means either, nor have we seen secretaries of DHS proposing for somewhat glamorous looking photo shoots at foreign detention facilities in the way that she did around the El Salvador deportations. So what's to be done about it? Beyond pointing out that it's unprecedented and outrageous and something we've never seen before, what can Democrats plausibly do about this over the course of the coming weeks and months?
Well, we're going to try to get an investigation. When we don't have the majority in the Senate or the House, it's hard to do that. We don't have subpoena power. We can't call people before committees. Sometimes we can have what we call shadow hearings, but they're not official. So our tools are limited, but we can continue to demand that we want to see an investigation. We want to understand why this happened. Why was he treated this way? Why does this administration, view the judiciary and the legislative branch as something less, than the executive branch and start, they're arresting members of Congress now. Certainly in my lifetime, I haven't seen anything like this. And
probably because they look upon to them as being traitors, and in actuality that they are, especially whenever you're talking about these sanctuary new standards that they're trying to promote to the American people that the American people are against. The American people, by and large, does not want criminals to come over here that we don't know nothing about that has come over here illegally. This has been an ongoing debate now for quite some time, and it's pretty obvious which way the American people stand. I mean, maybe some of these tactics are brutal. Maybe things could be handled in a different type way. But by and large, this is why the American people voted in Donald J. Trump, was to get a toehold over all this, because it had gotten this far out of hand.
They don't like the idea of an open border. Only 1 in 6, 15%, say they don't care about it. Well, most Americans do care about it. And the really good news, out of all the bad news of the last couple of days, was Donald Trump saying, we need farm workers. We need people that have been here 20 years to stay here. They're loved by their employers. Well, I don't know whether that's true or not. But he really went into detail about how great farm workers are and how important they are. And that means new farm workers regularly coming into the country. Hotel workers, not just for leisure, as he said it, but for people to travel for business or all kinds of reasons. We need workers in this country. But the big news that I think stands out, we've had the border closed now since January 20th. Closed. Nobody's complained. Nobody's complained. Not the Hispanic leaders, nobody. They're not out there because the American people wanted that border closed. They hated the idea of an open border. And under Biden, that was the case for too long. And the Democrats paid for it in November. That's why every disputed election went to Trump, because that issue and inflation together worked together to kill the Democrats. Now, the good news is I think there's a reasonable approach to this. The reasonable approach is keep the border closed as long as you can. Figure out a way to make it enduring closed border where people can get through when they have a true asylum issue. They really do have an asylum case, and that gets approved or disapproved at the border. If you let people in the country with an issue of their documentation, there's going to be deportations in both sides. All presidents are going to have to deport people if you let people in the country without serious reasons. So we got to do something at the border. And I think the farm workers, the hotel workers, it's very reasonable. Maria Teresa Camora this morning said, when people have been in the country 10 years, leave them alone. And that's a reasonable approach. They can do this legislatively. They can let people in the country after a while and say, we're going to deal with you down the road. You're not going to be bothered by the police or ICE. They can do that. They can do it. We can make a deal unless they want to fight. And I wonder whether people just want to fight about this issue. And I don't think that's good for the Democrats at all.
Senator Kelly, we want to close with the Army Parade 250th birthday, and that's going to be tomorrow. Tanks are in Washington, ready to be dispatched as part of the festivities. It is, of course, also President Trump's birthday. He turns 79 tomorrow. What do you think about this display of American military might on the streets of our nation's capital? And I should note, of course, your branch of service, the Navy, has its 250th birthday this year as well. But perhaps because it does not share that date with the president's birthday, no major parade scheduled.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that this morning, Jonathan. It's probably the case. I mean, this is more about Donald Trump. Hey, we should have parades at certain points, in our history. Veterans coming back from Europe after World War II is certainly one of them. And I can think of a lot of veterans that deserve parades. Later today, I'm going to go to Bethesda, Walter Reed, Bethesda, and meet with some veterans. And I'm sure there's a ton of guys and women there, injured combat veterans that deserve a parade. Donald Trump is not one of them. And this is the kind of display that you would see. I mean, North Korea does this every year. So do the Russians. I mean, this isn't, who we are as a country.
Well, we certainly appreciate you joining us this morning, and of course, your service. Democratic member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Thank you so much. Chris Matthews, thank you as
well. I agree. It's not about Donald J. Trump and his birthday, though all people that's living deserve to be recognized in recognition towards their birthday. But whenever it comes to the Navy versus the Air Force versus the Marines versus the Coast Guard, to me, this is my opinion, it ain't going to cost you nothing, but to me, the Army was the first established brother of arms going all the way back to the cavalry, even before America become what we know of America today regarding the patriots of that originated from the militia of being able to defeat King George III during the Revolutionary War. But even before that, there was other
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Ana Cabrera reporting from New York. Let's get right to the break.
Entanglements or clashes that if the United States military did not engage in, God only knows who we would be and what we would be, and we for darn sure wouldn't be what we are and who we are today if the United States Army did not pursue this in a humanitarian way. Once more, it was, to me, the way that I understand it, even during the Indian raids, the Army had begun to get a bad name for itself towards pillaging and taking basically everything that it could take, and it basically had created that same type of imagery even during the Civil War that my grandmother, Lucille Jordan, would sit and tell us boys about, how that her great-grandmother would tell them how that they had to hide up underneath the houses, and whenever the soldiers, the Union soldiers would come in, that they would basically pillage everything that they could pillage, and then sometimes they left the house standing, and sometimes they burned it down to the ground as well as the barn. but they would take the chickens and the chicken eggs. They would take not only the milk but the cow too. They would pillage. And that was one of the main concepts pertaining to the U.S. Army, that it did not want to be branded like or branded by. And to this day, as far as I know, the United States Army, regardless of what branch, does not want to be branded as being a bunch of bullies in basically going in and just taking over or taking everything that anybody's got, because that was not the primary purpose of establishing the Patriot Act to begin with. The Patriot Act was supposed to have been for Big Brother to take care of Little Brother, especially whenever Little Brother was being taken advantage of, and it didn't matter if it was enemy of domestic or enemy of foreign. We take a sworn oath in defending the Constitution. That way, people won't be taken advantage of this way. That's the primary concept to any branch of the United States brother in arms military. To me, that's my opinion about it. Let's listen to what you've got to say. Then after this, we're gonna have to let this go.
Right to the breaking news, the dramatic escalation in the Middle East, igniting new fears of a larger war in the region. Overnight, Israeli forces unleashed a brutal new barrage of attacks on targets inside Iran, striking the nation's main nuclear enrichment facility, killing several top military officials. Iran firing back, launching about 100 drones toward Israel. And right now, our eyes are on the White House, where the president is expected to meet with his national security team this hour. And in just the last hour, in a phone call with my colleague Garrett Haake, President Trump praised the manner in which the strikes were conducted. When asked what this means now for potential future talks with Iran, the president tells NBC News, quote, "They missed the opportunity to make a deal. Now they may have another opportunity. We'll see." We have our reporters and analysts covering every angle this morning. Joining us now, NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons, retired U.S. Army General Wesley Clark, who previously served as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and Aaron David Miller, former State Department Middle East negotiator and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Senior Fellow. Keir, lay out what we know after this volley of attacks between Israel and Iran.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's military calls this the first stage. It describes it as preemptive, precise, and a combined offensive. As you mentioned there, Anna, Israel says it hit dozens of targets in different areas of Iran, military leadership, military bases, and nuclear sites. Iran firing around 100 drones.
And I hope that my viewers can understand and identify that Israel is not doing what Israel per se would like to do. It goes back to the concept of whenever our dad was fixing to fly in and whip us boys, he would make remarks such as, well, this is going to hurt me a whole lot worse than it's going to hurt y'all. And of course, at the time, whenever we was the ones wearing the stripes and the blue marks, we thought that this is crazy, and him ever even making such of a gesture such as that. But the fact of the matter is, it works on the same concept as God the Father. Whenever God the Father is provoked to the point that there is no other alternative, that's whenever God the Father will basically display his wrath because of being provoked. Same way with individuals. It don't matter if it's countries or basically the army or whoever, that whenever you provoke these people, you can expect a reaction, because forever action is a reaction. And like I was saying a while ago, whenever you have to choose between the lesser of the two evils, sometimes you have to display your bad side in order to still maintain and to stay in control. And I know a lot of people are going to see that and not understand that and identify with that. But the bottom line is this: we all have a right to defend ourselves, especially if we feel like that our lives is in dire danger. And once all alternatives was off the table in making some sort of an agreement with these demons over there, this was the last alternative measure in choosing between the lesser of the two evils. It's sad. It really is, in the 21st century, to see all this bloodshed and all this anger and all this anxiety and all this hostility. It's sad that even to this day we still have not learnt our lessons whenever it comes to united we stand, divided we fall, pertaining to it's much better to work out alliances with each other than it is to go to war with each other. It's really sad. But getting back to what that they was discussing a while ago pertaining to Hamas, of that particular situation over there, and seeing basically 500,000 children starving to death because of the famine. That, in one perspective, is part of the collateral damage that goes along with this type of brutality. In another perspective, it's one of the most horrifying things that I've ever seen on TV, other than years ago, I think it was in the 70s, that we started paying a lot of attention to Africa, and we started seeing the same imagery over in Africa pertaining to starvation because of the climate changes that Africa was going through at that time, pertaining to people not being able to take care of themselves and seeing frail bodies on the side of the roads with swelled up bellies is not a pleasant sight for anybody to witness, regardless whether it's one continent or another. And the bottom line is, whenever you have evil that continues to keep provoking or challenging good, a lot of times good don't have no other alternative. It's kind of like going back to the spiritual war whenever the Luciferian Lucifer challenged the Heavenly Father. The Heavenly Father was put into a corner of having to make a decision towards, am I going to allow for this to occur and there not be no punishment or penalty because of it, or am I going to bring penalty and punishment because of this rebellion? Well, you can go from a supernatural spiritual level sense to now down here on the earth as far as the physical level sense. And there's no doubt that the wrong people with the wrong motives, even though they're using good as a strategy, can actually go too far to the point that even they themselves will be looked upon as being evil. This is where we, the people, have to make rational decisions in judging this accordingly and understanding what's actually happening. Same way with the Russia confrontation over in Ukraine. Whenever you have an entity that is purposely not just attacking military strategic targets, but actually targeting civilians, that breaks all Geneva type agreements, then you have to start looking at President Putin and the Russian government towards them being the same as a Bin Laden or a Saddam Hussein or Hamas or some other evil dictator like Hitler or etc. No one said that it was going to be easy. No one said that it was going to look fair. No one said that it was going to give the appearances of good overcoming evil and it being a clean sweep, or it looking like it's a bed of roses down here, because it's not. This is the reason why God has called his commanders, God has called his chiefs, God has called his messengers to the battlefield, and instead of being a playground, a battleground. And this is where we, as true born-again Christians, must look at all points and angles in identifying who's the actual perpetrator here that's provoking all this. To me, this is once more my opinion, the Christian society in the world, by and large, is not really such of a bad group of people to get along with and to participate with. By and large, most of us are fair-minded. By and large, if you want to practice whatever that you're practicing, in whatever form that you're practicing it in, as long as you're not throwing it up in my face, as long as you're not trying to dictate and dominate to my life, do whatever you want to do. But at the same level, don't make war with me because I'm doing what God has called me to do or what I feel like that I should do in the eyes of a righteous, holy God. This is the reason why the Bible is very clear, and I've said this before. The Father, it's really a commandment where it says, let the wheat grow with the tares. Wheat representing something good, tares representing something bad. Let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest. And it's supposed to be equal footing whenever it comes to the tares and the wheat, because it says specifically that if you try to inject the harvest before the harvest is supposed to be injected, well, then you're going to destroy the wheat too. You're going to destroy some of the good people too. That's the reason why the Bible says to let the wheat grow with the tares until time of harvest. It will be the harvesters, ultimately in the end, whenever God the Father comes back in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon them who know not him and upon them who obey not the gospel, it will be him and him alone that will separate the wheat from the tares. During that time will be whenever basically all hell is going to bust loose here upon to the planet, and during that time is basically whenever the reign of the false prophet and the Antichrist will come into play, because during that time, I'm not going to say all the Holy Spirit will be lifted from the planet, but the majority of it will be lifted from the planet, because that will be during the 7-year tribulation period time, and that will be also during the time that we will be rejoicing up in heaven towards receiving our rewards towards the complications and the sacrifices that we've made down here. It's called the Lamb's marriage, the feast. During that time of the 7-year feast up in heaven, there will be total hell down here on earth. During the time that the feast is happening, it will be the Father that will reassign us depending upon how we panned out down here, of giving us more assignments during that 1,000-year millennium reign, because Christ said that every knee would bow and that every tongue would profess that the Lord Jesus Christ was in fact God in the flesh that come for all of mankind's wickedness and sins. And if they're not willing to do it willfully, they'll be forced to do it forcefully. And of course we see that there will be a second resurrection where it talks about who are these. These are those that was under the altar who have washed their robes white, there in chapter 6 in Revelations. And it says that they should rest yet for a short season until the time of their brethren also will be fulfilled towards being killed. Now once more, I'm just a messenger to the Bible. I didn't create the Bible. I'm not changing nothing about the Bible. But I have to be honest about the Bible in expressing it the way that it needs to be expressed to the people. Because if I change anything about the Bible, then it talks about that the blessings will be taken from me, or if I add to the Bible, then the cursings will be added unto me. So I have to stay directly in the grassy row in preaching the truth about what the Bible says. Now, you can take it upon yourself of whether or not you support the Bible, whether or not you believe in the Bible, whether or not you don't believe in the Bible. Once more, it's a free country. Nobody's telling you that you have to do anything. But what we are telling you, that if you continue to keep punching and slapping us around, we're going to show our bad side. That's what we're telling you. We're going to let you know ahead of time that we do have the ultimate right in protecting ourselves, especially if we feel like that our lives is in dire danger. So in order for the meek to inherit the earth promptly, this is going to require a spiritual revival pertaining to the Holy Spirit leading and directing and giving us the insight, the knowledge, the power, the wits towards how to go about doing this in maneuvering around these problems, but at the same time not compromising, but at the same time us ourselves not provoking. So whenever somebody looks at this through a smoke glass or a haze, they must identify if they are about trueness and righteousness and fairness in looking at all the facts and not just part of the facts, and for the world in general to have turned against Israel and sided with Hamas whenever all this first broke out over there is a mere illustration of how the colleges, I'm going to go to the colleges right now, having penetrated young men and women's lives and their minds to the point that they become brainwashed. And they rather side with evil than to side with good. There's no doubt that even good sometimes has to use evil type tactics just to not allow for evil to overcome good. But this is where you have to have enough common sense to be able to look through the smoke stained glass and realize what's actually occurring here. I was so let down whenever I seen what was going on worldwide in basically all the continents, where people were standing up rooting for Hamas and demonizing Israel. That was so heartbreaking whenever I seen that. But it just goes to show you how much of a footing that evil has gained towards these strongholds, that I personally blame a lot of it on the so-called churches and the preachers and the politicians here in America that allowed for this to get in this type of shape. And now we have a presidency of Donald J. Trump that's trying to once more maneuver in and out towards doing the proper right things in the eyes of a righteous holy God, and sometimes that balancing act, that tight line walk, can be difficult. The same with Israel. It can be very difficult in how the global society is going to perceive you, how they're going to interpret you, how they're going to accept you or not accept you. Once more, we're dealing with an entity that is out to kill, steal, and destroy, that is the author of confusion, that was a liar and a murderer from the beginning. So we must first identify who the enemy is, what the enemy is, and why the enemy is doing what the enemy is doing. The enemy does not want the meek to inherit the earth. The enemy would rather see the tares go ahead and take out the wheat, even though it's not been called upon by the Father pertaining to the harvest, pertaining to the harvesters. Whenever this occurs, whenever the Father says, okay, this is where we must go, then it will be upon to the wicked and the demonic after we're gone, pertaining to the first global resurrection, to do as they will. But they're not going to do it right now during the time that we're still here. Regardless whether you be an American Christian or you be an Israeli Christian, regardless whether you're a Jew or Gentile, Greek, or whoever, This is where good must make a stand, even at the expense of sometimes being misinterpreted, in identifying that you're not going to do this to us, even though we have morals, even though we're a humane, civilized society. You're not going to do this to us and think that you're going to do it and get away with it. Because God did not intend for no Christian to be somebody's floor mat or somebody's whipping post. And that's exactly what was going on down here for 3 consecutive solid years. I'm getting off the subject a little bit right here, but I'm going to go ahead and throw this in there. But that's exactly what happened to my brother and I, David Jeffrey Jackson, here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. Whenever I come back to Tennessee in 2014, for 3 consecutive solid years, they was provoking, they was tormenting, they was terrorizing. We would go before the courts. We couldn't get the courts to pull in our favor. Well, naturally, you wasn't going to get the courts to pull in your favor, Juby, because they never did want to support the Windmill Ministries to begin with, going all the way back to 1989. I never did see no city town clerk or city townsmen's, mayors, or any of the politicians, much less the preachers that got in behind the Windmill Ministries missions. They didn't support it then, and as far as I'm concerned, they don't support it today, because I haven't seen no movement in Northwest Tennessee regarding this, even though 30 plus years has passed. So as we're seeing these things unfold, regardless whether they're unfolding in the Middle East, regardless whether they're unfolding over in Russia pertaining to the Ukrainians, or they're unfolding right here in our own backyards, pertaining to seeing what we're seeing out in LA and seeing what we're seeing that's going to show up tomorrow in retrospect towards all the people that's protesting about the illegal immigrants coming over here to America. As far as the sanctuary cities, we must stand true to that in which what we believe and that in which what we have been taught through the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. Because united we stand, divided we fall, and once we start gnawing and pawing and cutting one another's throats, which thank God Eli must have come to his senses, or somebody spoke to him and said, hey, what you just got through doing was you just got through cutting your own throat in attacking the President of the United States the way that you did. And finally, within about 4 or 5 days into that exchange, Eli Musk supposedly come to his senses and actually made an apology to the President of the United States. Now, whether or not they can patch all that up and the things that have been said will ultimately be forgotten about and go away, I don't know. Ordinarily, people are forgiving as long as you promote or show yourself. Whenever you do make a vital mistake like that, ordinarily people are forgiving, but we'll just have to wait and see. But for surely to God, he understood, or did understand. He probably didn't there at the beginning whenever he was gnawing and pawing and degrading the President of the United States the way that he was. But for surely to God, he understands that a divided house will not stand. And Elon Musk and his team members basically rely upon the United States government almost as much as the United States government relies upon Elon Musk and his team members. In other words, it's going to take a combination towards united we stand, divided we fall, if we're going to work our way out of this, and if we're going to see true, authentic, meek inherit the earth. Now, there's going to be uprisings. There's going to be conflicts. There's going to be resistance movements. There's going to be skirmishes, regardless whether it be American skirmishes, Russian skirmishes, Canadian skirmishes, South America or Mexico skirmishes, or China or African skirmishes. There's going to be skirmishes. Because the Bible said that in the last days we would hear of wars and rumors of wars until all this settles down. But my primary goal is still the goal that God put me on 30 plus years ago, which was ultimately seeing a temporary peace and utopia fall upon the society, not just here in America on this continent, but all the continents all over the world. But this is where we have to pull together and stick together, regardless whether we like each other or not, regardless whether we approve of how we dress or how we brush our teeth or how we smell or what we look like, if we're going to get through this pertaining to getting out of the storm. Once again, in order for an individual to truly identify what's going on in the Middle East, they have to first identify biblical Bible prophecy. Going back to the teachings of Christ, for whenever you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, know that you are at the doors. Whenever you shall see Jerusalem accomplished with armies, know that you are at the doors. Whenever you shall see all these occurrences taking place, to basically flee into the mountains and to pray that you're worthy to escape these things that will be falling upon to the planet in the final remaining last days. Pray that you can either endure them or pray that you're worthy enough to escape them. Because whenever the predictions of prophecies have been predicted of what's going to occur in the time frame that it's going to occur in, that's just like something that's written in stone. Kind of like gravity. There's laws of gravity. What goes up must come down, right? Or supposedly, until man made all these inventions and these satellites staying up in space the way that they do. But eventually, even they will come down. There will be no escaping the truth. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care how many missiles I don't care how many times you go to the moon or Mars or whatever. I don't care how long you stay on the space station. There will be no escaping the truth pertaining to the prophecies, because it says in the Bible that it would have been easier for all of heaven and for all earth to pass than for one jot or for one tittle of the word thy God to fail. So that's what various people has been trying to do, not just for the past events that went on in my particular life, in my brother's life, going from 2014 to 2017 up until he died, but going all the way back to the lifespan of the Windmill Ministries that stepped out into the eyes of the general public in 1989, driving around with the 4 horsemen in the back end of his truck, explaining to people about end-time biblical Bible prophecy. That's what people has actually been trying to do. Now, whether or not they was doing it intentionally, whether or not they was doing it consciously or subconsciously, whether or not they was actually provoking it, whether or not they was just standing idly by and not wanting to participate, either or, it all goes back to the mindset, or it all goes back to the motive of, well, we don't want this to occur. We don't want to see this happen. So let's silence this individual. Just like in 1989, whenever I was speaking on a radio station, and I was given an ultimatum by Jimmy Atkins of his uncle that owned Wooten dealership up here in Dresden, Tennessee, that either quit what you're talking about, silence yourself, or seek employment elsewhere. That was in 1989. That was before I was motivated enough to go and purchase an arts and craft display pertaining to the 4 horsemen and mount it to the back of my truck. And my son and I went to New York City and Washington, D.C. on our first crusade. Now, those are facts. I can't explain to you any differently other than to tell you the facts of what has occurred. And there has been an ongoing trajectory in trying to silence the individual that's talking to you in behind the camera right now, towards shutting him up and eliminating him from open population. Regardless whether they was using this tactic or that tactic, regardless whether it started with Homeland Security with Secret Service, or it was going down to certain individuals up in Kentucky, or certain individuals here in the state of Tennessee, or certain individuals out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. The whole concept to the whole big picture, putting all the dots together, was let's try to destroy this individual. They first attempted before 9/11 in promoting me as me being a lunatic. Once they identified after 9/11 in the year 2005, right here in Martin, Tennessee, right here in Weakley County, Tennessee, towards let's change the alternative motive, and now let's try to make Mr. Jackson to look like he is an enemy of the state, or let's make him attempting in making him look like that he is basically a homegrown terrorist, or has the potential of being a homegrown terrorist. All these moves have been documented. All these events have not been secretly recorded, but have been recorded either through legal means, medical means, or me keeping up with my material in being able to prove. Once more again, you can be like Tony Smith, that I was working for his daddy Jerry Smith for about 4.5 years in Milan, Tennessee, in explaining to me, well, that may be so, Juby, but you don't have to cram it down our throats. Well, Mr. Tony Smith, that's now working for a big insurance company that moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, you're right. I'm not going to cram it down your throats. I'm not going to give you an ultimatum in saying this is what you have to do, pertaining to, as I was accused of by Tommy Moore here in Weakley County, Tennessee, pertaining to the judge, of promoting some sort of manifesto. But what you do have to do, Tony Smith, what you do have to do, Mr. Tommy Moore and Mike Pence and all the other officials in this area, is live with the consequences in what you didn't do that you should have done. That's what you do have to do. But not only do you have to do that personally with yourself, in living with yourself, pertaining to your consciousness, but now you have to live with the fact that if you did enhance, if you did support, if you did back the founder of the Windmill Ministries, odds are you wouldn't be seeing all this destruction and all this pain and misery and anguish not only falling upon to the feet of the guilty, but now it's falling upon to the feet of the innocent. That's what you do have to do. You do have to live with the truth, because you know as well as I do, as much effort, as much time, as much money has been sent forth, even though I was having to go through the back door of the churches rather than the front. You are to blame. The fault falls upon your feet of the reason why that things are in the shape that they're in. Not only politically speaking, not only financially speaking, not only emotionally speaking, but spiritually speaking, and metaphorically speaking, and literally speaking. And you can break it down in any way that you want to, towards basically in different dimensions. But the bottom line is this: you're talking or listening to an individual that put forth every ounce that he could put forth of being an individual, by basically being a one-horse pony show that they kept wanting to shoot out of the saddle before I ever got out of the gate good. And those are the facts. Those are exactly the facts that began with Jimmy Atkins working for his business in Dresden, Tennessee, in giving me the first ultimatum, which was shut up, keep your mouth shut, or suffer the consequences, Dennis, by seeking employment elsewhere. Well, you know what I done? I sought employment elsewhere. Do I regret that I done that? No. Do I regret that I had to do that? Yes. Just like, do I regret that I went up to Land Between the Lakes after they blowed my truck up in 2009? I think I got my year right. I may be wrong about that. And basically reversed and turned the tables in praying for God, basically touching the throne room of God towards turning this around, in awakening these people, kind of like a missile that's trying to make a interception, or even a football player. Let's use an analogy of the sports. You're trying to intercept That was the only way that I could figure out how to intercept after that I had been provoked and after that I went through so much misery for 20 plus years. And I don't think nobody that had went through what I went through would not have done the same thing, probably in a whole lot less time than 20 years. Did I do what I wanted to do? No. Did I do what I felt like I had to do? Yes. Why did I do that? Because I was provoked into it. Once more, trying to intercept. That's what you're seeing right now pertaining to Israel. Intercepting, choosing between the lesser of the two evils, identifying that these people are full of it. They're full of madness. They're full of evil. They're not wanting to negotiate no type of civilized agreement. So the next best thing, which is the lesser of the two evils, is to attack them. Kill them. Take them out. Before what? Before they take us out. Before they kill us. Proof is in the pudding. We know what they've already done, disclosed in wanting to kill the righteousness of God, in wanting to take out Israel and everything about Israel that surrounds Jerusalem. And the second people that they want to kill or take out is the Americans. That was known, I think, long about 1993. And that was way before 9/11. Way before 9/11. That we know that we had enemies at far that wanted to do us harm. But the sad thing about this is that it is now festered for 30 plus years, since the late 80s and the early 90s, to the degree that now we have enemies right here among ourselves. To the point that you don't even know who your neighbor is, and you don't know that your neighbor is a good person or a bad person. Because now we have sheltered ourselves and we become isolated. Well, that's exactly what the enemy wanted us to do. The enemy didn't want us to pull together, to become united. The enemy wanted to keep us isolated. Just like what they done to the founder of the Windmill Ministries, they wanted to keep the founder of the Windmill Ministries on a one-man pony show. Because the evil entity knows that there's strength in numbers. And as long as they could keep Dennis James Jackson, known as Juby, down on a personal level, towards him not having a Joel Osteen congregation or a Joel Osteen support team, we can defeat Dennis Jackson. Okay? Well, I understood that, and I grasped that, and I went ahead and accepted that, though in my accepting that, I retaliated, and the way that I retaliated was God open up hell, sick Lucifer upon to these evil demonic people, in knowing that it's only through you and by you that controls all things. Once more, did I do that because I wanted to do it? No. I did that because I was provoked into it, and that was my last ultimatum. Same way with Israel. Are they doing what they're doing right now because they actually wanted to do this? Is Israel actually involved in fighting Hamas because they want to see over 500,000 children starving to death right now? I don't want to believe that. And I'll never believe that about the people over in Israel. I don't want to believe that pertaining to the American alliances that stand so strongly with our men and women in arms. Once more, that development was developed over 250 years ago to the birthday coming up tomorrow for a reason. And that was to make sure that the cripple, the weak, the innocent, those that was not strong enough to stand for themselves, that Big Brother or the men and women in arms would make sure, towards being a referee, would make sure that that didn't occur to the weak and those that was vulnerable this way. Whenever you have the judges in America, our laws, that have stepped aside from the trueness of what our ancestors intended for this to run as, then you'll see the citizens take over, and that's where you're seeing these clashes, these problems being developed right here in the United States because of. Thanks again. God bless America. Happy birthday to our men and women in arms pertaining to all branches of military, including our space, that Donald Trump implemented in being recognized as all the other 5 branches. Thank you for your patriotisms in those who are serving today, those who have served, and those futuristically that will serve. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our United States military. God bless America, and God bless our endeavors. And once more again, shalom. Hallelujah. As I travel through this pilgrim land, there is a friend who walks with me. As I kneel in prayer, I hope to meet you there. Precious Jesus, hold my hand. As I kneel in prayer, I hope to meet you there. Precious Jesus, hold my hand. Thank you. God bless. Shalom.